What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for joining us back on the channel, and thanks to all the new subscribers. So today we are here for a reading update, and it's quite extensive. Been reading a lot of stuff here. Well, not a lot, but a pretty decent amount to keep me busy. And I hope this video will inspire you to not only read, but to read multiple volumes at once. And why do we read multiple things at once? Well, because it's kind of like when you're at a buffet or a restaurant. You don't want to just overindulge and stuff yourself on the actual meal or the appetizer or whatever the case may be. We got some fireworks going on here. Happy 4th of July. We love America. So the reason we read multiple volumes at once is not only to, that's quite loud, reading one volume at a time definitely has its place, and I would definitely say it's a really good practice. But if you're a very voracious, very addictive reader like I am, one volume will just simply not do it for you. Now, having said that, if you read one volume at once, you could probably finish it quite a bit faster, right? But at the same point in time, we get kind of bored. Our attention span needs nourishment. We need some energy to breathe. We need some breathing room, and that's why we read multiple books at once. So I'm just going to kind of give you guys a quick rundown of all the books that we're currently reading. It's a beautiful stack. So we're going to start with the Tao Te Ching. We just finished this. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. You guys can check out the most recent video about Lao Tzu. But we are going to re-explore the Tao Te Ching because it's full of amazing life nourishment, life advice, and just really sort of epic, but very, very simplistic philosophy. It's not very complex philosophy, but it is a form of philosophy. It's more like ancient Chinese poetry, right? But really, really great stuff. So we're going to kind of do a rereading, a reanalysis of the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. Hope you guys will enjoy that. Up next, we have Edith Wharton, Ethan Frome. That's always a tongue twister. Edith Wharton, Ethan Frome. And we are almost finished with this. We are at the tail end of Ethan Frome. It's been a really, really wonderful journey. I did not know what to expect when going into Ethan Frome, but I think it's going to make for a great analysis. Sort of the basic storyline is the tensions of sexuality, the tensions of men and women that takes place in a rural landscape. It has an extremely Marxist, feminist, overly woke intro. We'll get into a little bit of that. I didn't pay too much attention to that, but the meat and the potatoes is actually in the actual story, and it's quite short. We've done some pretty decent annotations, as you can see, and I can't wait to share Ethan Frome with you all very, very soon. Written by a woman, and like we said a couple months ago, we wanted to sort of get some more experience under our belt, so we are going to be exploring some female authors, not just for the sake of reading female authors, but for the sake of enriching our literary experience, right? You can get something out of female authors that you can't get out of male authors, and obviously vice versa. Up next, we have Frances Burney, Evelina. Evelina by Frances Burney. We are about 84 pages into this, very, very heavily annotated, as you can see, and I'm quite enjoying this. I did not want to read this when I first started it, but having taken a couple days off from it, it's actually quite a compelling story and gives you a lot of really, really interesting, stimulating insight into the 17 and 1800s social class between men and women, sort of in upper elite society. There's a lot of references to a lot of other really good literature and plays and music in here. So this is definitely something you should keep on your radar. Evelina by Frances Burney. So up next, you guys are probably aware that we're always reading Proust. We are doing a rereading of Swann's Way. We are on page 230, so we've knocked out a good almost 300 pages of this. And the more you read Proust, the more your mind expands, and just the more your writing abilities expand too. And we have a series of videos on the best way to approach Marcel Proust. From my opinion, I'm not a master scholar or anything like that, never claimed to be, but I do really, really enjoy Proust, and I would like to say I have a decent amount of reading experience under our belt to sort of start approaching Proust as far as our YouTube content goes. Proust is a very, very difficult sort of nut to crack. I will definitely say that, but Proust will constantly reward you. Now, he's not instant gratification by any means, but he is just a beautiful writer. So we'll check back up on Proust very, very soon. Now, up next, we have Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon. Now, you guys might have heard about this novel if you watch Jay Dyer's content and some of the other guys up on YouTube. This is by a man named Dave McGowan. I think he's recently deceased, unfortunately, but a really interesting scholar, really interesting writer that sort of documents a lot of the untold stories of Laurel Canyon, as well as the 60s supposed counterculture. He talks about Jim Morrison, Buffalo Springfield, people like, James Taylor and Linda Ronstadt and the Monkees and all kinds of, maybe not the Monkees, but people like that, sort of the music scene, the Mamas and the Papas, all of those really big names. Frank Zappa, for example, he sort of brings to light and sort of unveils a lot of the assumptions and a lot of the fantasies that have been sort of misconstrued about our 60s music counterculture, and he puts it sort of in a context of esoteric and sort of American military industrial complex conspiracies, and you can definitely not ignore a lot of these parallels. It's undeniable. It's really interesting, and I will never look at Jim Morrison the same, or Frank Zappa, or any of those guys. And I wasn't a huge 60s music buff, but I was a huge fan of the Doors, and I listened to a little Janis Joplin and stuff like that. But there's definitely something very extremely compelling going on and Dave McGowan's Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon. So we'll talk more about that in the next video. If you guys want more in-depth stuff about the whole 60s counterculture conspiracies, you can check out Jay's analysis or the Jay Dyer YouTube channel, as well as some of the other lesser known YouTube channels. And now Dave McGowan is not the only writer that's written about this. There's been quite a few in the past. He actually mentioned some of those in his book. We're going to move on to the next book, which is, let me go grab the dust jacket cover so you guys can see how beautiful this dust jacket cover is. This is Oh Lost by Thomas Wolfe. This is what it looks like without the dust jacket. I just take it off for the sake of convenience. The dust jacket is just really beautiful. I'm putting it on right now, but it tends to be kind of floppy and bulky, and just it's a little bit of a nuisance. But this is the cover for Thomas Wolfe's Oh Lost. And I actually forgot to mention, speaking of Thomas Wolfe, we actually just blew through The Hills Beyond. Now, I really, really liked the first section, and then the second section was him sort of developing the mythology for the Pentlands and the Gant family that he writes about quite frequently in his epic novels. I would say the first, part of the section of short stories, novels, was definitely the strongest, and then it just sort of got a little bit too, not a little bit too anything. I mean, it was really brilliant, but it got very detached from Eugene Gant or George Weber, and I prefer when Thomas Wolfe writes about his alter ego protagonists, which are Eugene Gant and George Weber, and sort of the mythology around those families. And you'll get plenty of that in The Web and the Rock. But anyway, let's move back on to Oh Lost by Thomas Wolfe. Now, this is the original version of Thomas Wolfe's debut album, Oh Lost, or his debut album, Look Homeward Angel. This is the original manuscript that was heavily, heavily edited by Maxwell Perkins and various other people. But this is the true, unadulterated, unfiltered, mind you, genius of Thomas Wolfe. And it's quite profound. It's quite beautiful. I don't know why Maxwell Perkins decided to edit so much out of this original manuscript. Now, basically, this novel starts... you guys have heard me talk a lot about... got a great picture of Thomas Wolfe here. Gangly young fella. You guys have heard me talk quite a bit about Thomas Wolfe and his family mythology, but this novel basically creates the foundational mythology for his family, and it goes all the way back to the Civil War. And the sort of in the early part of the novel, the main protagonist is Thomas Wolfe's father, Mr. What's his name here? How could I forget his name? William Oliver Wolfe. In the novel, he's actually William Oliver Gant, so Thomas Wolfe didn't take too many, discrepancies there. away from his family. This is a beautiful portrait of his mother and father. I thought his mother was quite cute back in the day, before the toils of life kind of ruined her. But this documents the early part of his father's life, his father's intentions, his father's failures. His father was an alcoholic, but he was also a stone cutter. And he, never quite achieved the level to carve angels or anything like this, but he worked on gravestones. He did a lot of decorative stonemason work. He might have, had some assistants and maybe a master that was over him. But this sculpture in particular, there's debate whether it actually existed, but this is sort of the logo, or sort of the representational artistic image for the angel that Eugene Gant sort of faces and sort of talks to after his brother dies at the end of the novel. I'm not sure how this novel is going to turn out, but I assume it's relatively similar to Look Homeward Angel. But anyway, going back a little bit to William Oliver Gant, this documents the Gant family life. Like I said, going all the way back to the Civil War. And he meets a couple different women until finally he meets the beautiful Julia Wolfe. Eliza Gant in the novel is her protagonist name. So then it sort of starts to get into Eugene and his family. Now, I haven't gotten to the Eugene part. What was cut out of Look Homeward Angel was almost 50 pages of an introduction, a prologue, I guess you could say. There's some samples of Thomas Wolfe's wonderful handwriting there. He wrote mass amounts of manuscript. It's amazing he was ever able to get published because he wrote so much. But he, Lost, despite what its reputation has sort of told about it, it's only about 662 pages. Now, maybe Lost even probably went through some revision, some editing. A lot of it was probably cut out. But the good thing about Thomas Wolfe is when one piece is cut out, you'll catch it later on in another novel or another short story or another essay or something. So Thomas Wolfe's wonderful work is never really quite lost. But so far, I think it's one of the best Thomas Wolfe novels. I think it's better than Look Homeward Angel. Compared to Look Homeward Angel, this is like the meat and the potatoes and the foundation. Look Homeward Angel now, in hindsight, after reading Lost, comes across as kind of butchered and over-edited and a little bit sporadic. He basically, in Lost, Thomas Wolfe is constructing the entire mythological universe for his family that lived in, just a wonderful mythological universe of an American family that lived in the United States. And that's what you get with Thomas Wolfe. You get a lot of, you get some narcissistic introspection and alter ego type stuff. Eugene Gant is the stand-in for Thomas Wolfe himself, but you get a wonderful mythology of his family and his clan and the history of his family. So I would definitely encourage you guys to get this beautiful copy of Lost. And lastly but not leastly, we're always keeping the Bible in our peripheral. And I'll tell you guys a little bit where we're at in the Bible. We are still working on the New Testament, and we're in the middle of Corinthians, actually. We blew through Acts, we blew through Romans, and we blew through John and all the, sort of the Gospels. And that's where the New Testament starts. And I think as far as, there's sort of a difference in the biblical scholarship of the New Testament versus the Old Testament, right? The Old Testament's much older, but as far as the more modern Christian worldview, Orthodox worldview, it's good to have the Gospels and the New Testament under your belt. And as soon as we're done with Romans, or as soon as we're done with Corinthians, there's a second part of Corinthians, apparently. And then we move on to Galatians, and then the Philippians, and then so on and so forth. And then once we're done with the New Testament, we are going to rewind and start all the way back to the book of Genesis. Kind of where we started a few months ago when we were studying John Steinbeck's East of Eden. But we're going to start with the book of Genesis, reread that entirely, and then we'll just blow through the Old Testament as quickly as we possibly can. Now, I don't think you should just blow through the Bible, but you want to try to make it a priority. You want to have the biblical knowledge under your belt. You want to be able to draw parallels from the Bible into your favorite authors, your favorite writers, as well as your favorite philosophers. I hope this video does inspire you guys. That's a beautiful stack of books, and we're in over our head. But we got the rest of the summer and all of next year to kind of devour these books. And after we're done with, well, we're actually kind of already knee deep into the female authors. Now, I'm not going to read female authors exclusively. We're still going to be reading, the classic male authors. I've got a lot of different stuff I want to read. We're reading Dave McGowan, we're reading Lao Tzu, we're reading Marcel Proust, as well as Thomas Wolfe. But as time goes on, we are going to have to really start picking apart this bookshelf and just kind of really trying to get through it. But it's not going to be a rush process. I'm going to be making videos for quite some time, so I hope you guys will enjoy this. And probably the next video is definitely going to be Ethan Frome analysis. We'll talk a little bit about that. There's not really so much esoteric stuff in Ethan Frome, but I think there's definitely enough to sink your teeth into, and we can sort of talk about postmodernism, feminism, and sort of the harsh Marxist revolution that we're kind of living under currently. So I hope you guys will look forward to these reviews as well as the process of these readings. We're going to be doing some different projects based on my reading responses and stuff like that. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure you guys follow me on Instagram at Andrew Marlowe Artist Official, or send me an email at andrewmarlowe22@gmail.com, and we will see you guys very soon.